Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is finally out, and I can say that the final result is pretty good. That's what I was going to say, but after further playtime I turned lukewarm towards the experience, and actually eventually I turned boiling red hot. I've heard a lot of talk about difficulty in other reviews, and I think that most reviewers, including independent ones, are just speaking nonsense. They sound like they want credibility and keep talking about how the game is not hard enough, when in reality it starts fair and then just becomes nonsense. The game, especially in the Komori segments and the bosses, can get way out of pocket. I'll demonstrate this immediately because most of my issues with the game hinder upon this flaw. In my example, I'm trying to get to the end of this segment with Komori. If you kill the enemies, you won't make it in time, but if you don't kill them, they'll get in the way of the next part. There's a pivotal mechanic called the hypercharge. Killing a weak enemy allows you to kill a stronger one with one blow. Even when you get to kill the monster to get an hypercharge, another gets in the way of your projectile. Unlike the melee hypercharge, the projectile one only kills one enemy upon a direct hit. It seems to have splash damage when hitting surfaces though. It means in practice that you can't get the orb to extend your time. I make it, but in the most half-assed way possible. The Komori segments really suffer from poor enemy placement. And yes, Ninja Gaiden Ragebound is one of these games where you have to kill the enemies in a Simon Says kind of way. There are certain segments in this game that give me the impression that they can't be done clean. The enemy placement, along with their numbers and patterns, are too erratic to allow one to find a concrete solution. What makes a hard game feel fair is to have a control scheme that can be mastered, along with options that can be taken to victory. If things are not going your way, do this. The weak point of the boss is such and so. You failed because you didn't recognize an option. I have the impression that programmers put systems in the game but didn't bother to check if they worked in practice. I.e., did anyone playtest this? I give an example for level design, but for the bosses, Daycrag has to be one of the worst. You're supposed to hit the crystals he throws to gain hypercharge, but they take extremely long to break with the guillotine boost or melee. You expose yourself to the next attack. That's assuming the boss just didn't leap directly after throwing it, leaving you no room to deal with said crystal. That's also if he didn't just destroy said crystal. Most of the time you will throw it and destroy it before you get the chance to interact with it. On the subject of hypercharge, this mechanic starts well but turns quickly on itself. It has a delay for some reason. Projectiles also require energy, so sometimes you won't be able to hit an enemy because you have none left. Seeing how weak it is, I wonder why it's kept behind an energy bar. Also, the progression of enemies doesn't always make sense. Why does the shield enemy have a projectile-based hypercharge? It defeats the point of killing from a distance. I have to get close behind him anyway. Why not have him be a melee hypercharge? Things like that completely kill the flow that was established in the first two acts and just compile to make a stressing experience. Demons eventually just pile up on screen and you can't tell which monster was supposed to be killed to get hypercharge for whom. The flow is lost and you often have to wait for said carrier to show up or backtrack even to kill a monster. I also noticed the futility of items. Never use them and they're not well integrated into the game. I also find the moveset to be fairly anemic. I wonder why Komori is simply not a character you swap to or has more different levels. Dodging the lightning of the flying insect boss was awful, but what was really awful is that one of the objectives is to beat her without getting hit. If you get it once, that's a wrap. The checkpoint accounts for you being hit, so you have to redo the entire level. Why is there no restart at checkpoint option? The challenges can be a bit too much and really distracting on the first playthrough. Yes, there's items that can raise your rank, but now we have to contend with also getting an S plus rank that does nothing, by the way. The music, while not bad, it's serviceable, but kinda feels lacking. Games like Metroid sound like they were made by aliens. Not only do we have a range of digital instruments and vocals, but the pitch and the notes played really serve to elicit reactions in the human brain. Certain songs sound grandiose and others ominous. The songs here are definitely head boppers, but nothing more, and can be quite interchangeable. It's nothing I'm going to add into my playlist. I'm also wondering if the inconsistent second half also simply didn't just make me hate everything, and I was just so focused on the frustration that I didn't even care about the music anymore. Overall, the more I played and the less I got invested into the game. I realized that I would play the game only 20 to 40 minutes at a time, play one level, and essentially stop. The levels reach the point where they almost outgrow their welcome, but you definitely get past that point when you reach the boss. By the end, because of all the weird design, you end up 15 to 20 minutes deep into a level. I had issues with Blasphemous, but didn't think much of it. Now that I've played this game, I can say that the Game Kitchen are strong at art, character designs, music, and just nice production values in general. In terms of actually designing a game, they have a lot to learn. It mostly comes down to a lack of polish. I'm probably not going to rush to buy a game from them or the Temu. Especially not the Temu. The new Marvel beat 'em up looks like it has a bit of an agenda in it. She-Hulk has this design that straddles censorship and femininity. It's a design that's going to please no one, and for some reason, she was the center of the initial promo materials. Now it's a nihilist, but I didn't fail to notice. Going back to Ragebound, the canon ending, ending A, is Kenji being trapped into the demon realm. Both characters are barely fleshed out, but Komori is definitely the more competent of the two. It's the subtle messaging that will earn you accusations of schizophrenia, but then again, people deny blatant horrors, go figure. Like Kanye, I'm probably 3 months early. Honestly, I doubt the validity of anyone who says this game is good. I immediately know you only played the first quarter only. It's also time to tear down accessibility. That was never more than virtue signaling and a way for game reviewers who don't actually know their way around a controller to play. May I remind you that there's a guy who competes at EVO and plays with his face. Visibility options are for accessibility, but the rest is just nonsense. It has been for a while just an excuse to not balance your game. When the game gets frustrating, not fair, not hard, just frustrating, simply making myself invincible is not a solution. I only use that feature for the final level, and ironically the final boss had to be the only pleasant boss outside of the first one, even if its light bar was a little bit too big. I only lowered the damage incoming and removed the damage knockback. But at this point, if you choose to not interact with the game, what's the point of playing in the first place? This is just laziness. I'll give it to them, they actually remixed the levels for the hard mode, but do I really want to play a hard mode of a game that was so poorly balanced in normal? Lizard Cube is really the studio to watch for. They're the ones who actually made Streets of Rage, and that game was fantastic. And now my attention is more focused on Shinobi more than anything. Shinobi plays well, but it doesn't feel like Shinobi. Ninja Gaiden plays more like Shinobi than Shinobi itself, but looks better than it actually plays. Honestly, the decline is so sharp near the end that I'd say keep your money. This review has way exceeded its desired length. I thought this was going to be a 5-minute review about how the game is good, buy it, and it turns out that the demo was unfortunately the peak of the game. Okay, I'm actually not quite done. There's a couple of things that came to mind to me, but I didn't have time to sneak them into the review. Well, first off, the game seems to have performance issues. I tried to disable vertical sync in the NVIDIA control panel and in the actual game, and it helps to some extent, but when I replayed the game in hard mode, the frame drops and the skipping was just off the charts. Going back to the woke agenda, I noticed that, especially near the latter half of the game, a lot of the enemies are women. And no, the simple presence of women doesn't mean that a game is woke, but in a game where there's a lot of fighting to be done, it made sense at first to have women use projectile attacks and stay out of range, but then you realize that a lot of them, even melee, are women, and it seems like even there's almost no male enemies outside of maybe the final boss and the devils. I was somewhat enjoying myself in hard mode, especially in the beginning levels, until I reminded myself that, oh yeah, a lot of enemies will just spawn last second and attack you, or spawned off screen and then are already running at you or throwing a projectile, which is really frustrating because it's not even hard, it's just you didn't give me time to react. Something was happening before I was even aware of it. That hypercharge delay really fucking sucks, especially in bosses, because there were times where you would have saved yourself, but no, you get hit because there's a delay. And especially in the fights where you have to destroy, let's say, crystal to get an hypercharge, you have to do so many hits that you end up spamming the attack and you end up accidentally using your hypercharge, because if you whiff it, it still counts as being used. Correction, I was looking more into the hard mode, and guess what? There's actually a final secret mission. There's technically 5 chapters. It's chapter 5-1, and in that chapter, after finishing the hard mode, you get to play Kumori again, and she's stuck in hell, and you have to fight your way out, and it's implied that she's trying to find a way out and will eventually. A bit a la Virgil in Devil May Cry 3. So definitely there. So despite her staying in hell being presented as ending B and being non-canon, it actually turns out that it will be canon for an eventual sequel bait. And this is what I've been talking about all the time. It starts with little things. She-Hulk is less feminine. The breasts of Rouge the Bat are not as significant. And by the way, I'm not a furry. And oh, your male character that gets just slightly undermined. He gets into a lot of bad situations. And then eventually, oh, it turns out that the female character will now be the star of the show. When has any female character been the real star of the show in a Ninja Gaiden game? I'm not against the idea of having the female characters being the star of the show. My problem is that we didn't get a game with Rachel or an Ayane or Momoji. They always get sections, but now the girl boss will probably get her own game, but not the already pre-established female characters, and that's my problem. if it was a matter, I'm not even arguing because it's worthless arguing, but if it was a matter of, well, let's present and give more spaces to the minorities or the female characters, you already have pre-existing characters. Why not use those? But you didn't use those characters. Obviously, you try to shove in some kind of diversity hire or girl boss character that nobody likes, or you try to hijack, yes, a character that already exists, but then you make a warped version of that character, a mockery of it.